we are good too. All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to what month is this? The September Networking at Noon. We are very fortunate today to have with us the Healthy Workforce Consortium, Healthy Workforce Network, as well as the Alcohol and Drug Council, collaborating on a federal grant to supply information for workforce development and the OJT grant here in Tompkins County. During today's Networking at Noon session, we'll learn more about this collaboration and what it means to be a recovery-friendly employer and how to participate in this program. We are very fortunate to have this Networking Noon and all Networking Noons brought to you by our sponsors, One Step Coaching, Sharaba Walker, Hilton Garden Inn, CFCU Credit Union, and Sheldrake Wine. My name is David Walton. I am the event program manager and very pleased to welcome you all here with us today. During today's webinar, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. We'll also have some time at the end for Q&A. So if you have questions that you'd like to ask direct to any of our panelists, please feel free to do so. And on that note, without further ado, I'd like to turn things over to Chamber President, Ms. Jennifer Tavares.
Thanks, David. Thank you all for being here. I do hope a few more folks will join us because there's probably 9 or 10 people at least missing right now. And it's not even a beautiful day outside. So there's, no like wonderful sunny day outside to be pulling them away. So hopefully they'll come in the next few minutes. So thanks for that intro. It's wonderful to get to focus on our nonprofit sector, which I'm sure most of you know is actually a substantial part of our membership at the Chamber. We have about a 13% nonprofit sector membership rate out of our total membership. And this collaboration that we're fortunate to be a part of seemed like an important thing to share, but also the timeline of rolling out some of these services in this program and to engage a broader race of employers and businesses within our network. Really, it was the time for us to do that and a really good opportunity for us to leverage the Networking at Noon program to try to increase awareness about this, this important collaboration. It's also a really interesting model. I'm not aware. I know there's a lot of collaboration in our community. I've seen evidence of so much of it. I know a lot of us work together very regularly, but this is the largest number of organizations that I've seen attempt to work together on a single project, at least in my time in the last few years. So it's really unique in that way. And I think, I think we'll probably share that sometimes it's, easy and it's always rewarding, but sometimes it's more challenging and it's been both fun and also a lot of work. So I think I want to start with asking Angela Sullivan from the Alcohol and Drug Council to do a quick introduction, and then we'll go around to our different organizations.
Thank you, Jennifer. I'm Angela Sullivan, Executive Director of Alcohol and Drug Council. We are a local prevention, education, and treatment organization. And I think that's it.
Well, thank you for that, Angela. Ashley Dixon, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure, thank you. My name is Ashley Dixon. My pronouns are they, them. I work at Tompkins Cortland Community College, where I am the Collegiate Recovery Program Coordinator. And a lot of our work revolves around helping students enter the job force and be a part of the community. Thank you.
Thanks, Ashley. Mike, how about you go next?
Everybody, my name is Mike Foster. I am an employment specialist at Challenge Workforce Solutions, and our mission is creating pathways to employment for people with disabilities and barriers to employment.
And then Suzanne, how about you?
Hey everybody, my name is Suzanne Burnham and I work for OAR of Tompkins County. It stands for Opportunities, Alternatives, and Resources. I'm the academic advisor and outreach coordinator for OAR's College Initiative Upstate program, and I'm here today to represent both entities.
Great, thank you for that. So that's all of our speakers for today, although we have several other program partners here who might jump in and help answer questions or have some thoughts to share. So I'm going to get started with sort of our next question, and we're actually going to ask Angela and maybe Emily if you want to chime in as well. You know, how this collaboration all came about, how you managed to pull this team of organizations together to write this grant application, and really just to give us a deeper dive on everything that is included and what it means and the different services that are going to be available as part of this network.
Thanks. So where I would want to start is actually to give some credit where credit is due. As a field, sort of in the prevention treatment space, we always recognize that one of the main challenges to sustained recovery was employment, or education, then employment. And it was something we were consistently hearing over and over again. And by virtue of hearing the same from colleagues in other parts of New York State, I happen to be friends with or colleagues with Dr. Julie Dostal in Oneonta. And she was working with her community on what they call environmental strategies to reduce the impact of substance use disorder and to guide people on that path to recovery and then support recovery. And from that, they essentially, long story short, established a recovery to work recognition program. So they were recognizing employers who made it supportive and easier for people in recovery to have meaningful employment, and made a movie about that, and we got to see that movie. And so I actually saw it at a state association meeting first and was incredibly inspired, and this seemed like a solution that would really benefit our community and our region. And then Emily Parker and I, Emily, our development director, we were invited by the Southern Tier 8, which is the Appalachian Regional Commission organizer, economic development program in our Southern Tier region, hosted a session and really highlighted the partners that made this happen in Otsego County, which involved, a treatment program, a recovery support program, a chamber of commerce, and actually one of their lead presenters was an attorney. And so it just makes sense. I mean, I don't want to say, I want to give credit where credit was due. Their model made sense, and it seemed to mobilize the right groups to get at the issues of stigma. And never let it be said that I don't take a good idea and try to make it bigger and better. That's sort of what I like to do. And so I apologize for the complexity of the nature of how many partners we have, but that led to, and in the long run, I think it will really absolutely lead to efficiencies. And so I look to partners here in Tompkins County who would be touching those same areas. So Chamber of Commerce for employers, Challenge for the ADA support in the workplace, OAR, because you are actually working with the population that would need education and employment supports, and TC3, because you could help provide those educational supports. And the group of us came together, and with a lot of discussion and back and forth, we submitted, thanks to Emily, and I will say Stacy Murphy Grant Consulting, submitted the application for federal money, and then we received the Federal Department of Labor award that helps sustain the partnerships. And our plan was not just to create something new and shiny, it was to take what people were doing already and leverage that to do it better together and have a stronger system of support for people in recovery related to employment. Did I miss anything, team?
Well
Good.
said. I think we built this around partners who they did extremely well. And we were just looking to bring resources to the table to help us all do it efficiently, really create wraparound support for people so people were less likely to slip through the cracks and get warm handoffs and really very much more personal, wide-ranging supports to be successful in re-entering the workplace. So well said, Angela.
Thanks for that. Appreciate that. So now we're going to go around to each partner and hear a little bit more about their specific role and services. Because one thing about this that's a little bit complicated is that there are actually a number of different entry points for clients potentially. And because some partners have direct services to clients, people in recovery. And then we as the chamber, for example, work more directly with the employers, and the on-the-job training grant component is more a connector to that place of employment to provide additional incentives and help cultivate the recovery-friendly employer base. Sort of understanding all those different parts and how they all will connect together and all the different entry points, I think is something that is helpful. So does anyone want to volunteer to start first, or should I just call on someone?
Take the
Mike?
ice. Our role in this program, multifaceted in two different directions. We're going to provide a classroom setting. End goal with this program is there will be 7 different counties included. So that'll be done through distance learning scenario and also provide one-on-one supports. Classroom setting, we will run through a curriculum that is cyclical in nature so people can come into it at any point in time without missing anything. And a very heavy focus in the classroom setting is going to be on soft skills, things like communication, different language registers to use, passive versus aggressive versus passive aggressive versus assertive. General overviews in the classroom setting of things like interview skills, master applications to have information all centralized in one area, and then in a one-on-one setting, getting deeper and personalizing those things to individuals to meet them where they're at with their things.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Ashley, do you want, oh, Suzanne, you unmuted.
I was going to say, I'm happy to go next, follow on Mike's heels. So remembering that I'm representing both OAR and OAR's program CIU, I'll start with OAR. OAR's role is to help a client in recovery from a substance use disorder to transition to and then stay employed, ultimately. Well, this would include referring a client to a job site, following up with that client upon referral, assisting with purchasing work clothing, transportation issues, bus passes, issues, anything that you can even think of, maybe some childcare needs that would impede with a client's success. CIU's role is to assist students in recovery to engage in college prep classroom training or right in the college setting, formal training. College Initiative Upstate does this by offering a college prep training class in conjunction with TC3 Biz. We are now doing that regularly 3 times a year for 6-week periods. And the other way we do that is to help a student to engage or re-engage in formal classroom training, usually at TC3 to start with, but we do support students in other colleges. We ultimately want these students to graduate and then to move into the workforce. We assist by supporting students in the process of not only applying and enrolling, but then moving through their college degree programs, and that requires a lot. I'd have to take up the whole time to explain, but we are with the student from the very beginning to the end out into the workforce. That is our goal.
Thanks, Suzanne. And then Ashley?
follow that up, sure, because I actually work very closely with Suzanne and am myself a CIU student, so I really can speak to, they really help you from my time as a student at TC3, and now I'm finishing up my bachelor's at SUNY Cortland, and I'm about to start my master's program, and I know that CIU will still be there. So they really do a whole lot. TC3, like Suzanne mentioned, we have our biz program, so it's not just college degrees, it's also certifications and specific trainings for positions in the community. Biz works really closely with the community to fill needs based on what local businesses are looking for in terms of certifications. We also, of course, have a whole bunch of degree programs, well over 50, I believe, that are 2-year programs that have transfer opportunities or 2 years straight into the workforce. And my specific role on campus is to provide one-on-one and access to resources for students that are specifically in recovery. So a lot of CIU students will come into our recovery space and they may be seeking connection with myself or with Suzanne, who has office hours when we're not in a pandemic, and to really give them that warm handoff and connect them with whatever they need. My big thing on our campus is a no wrong door policy. Any student can walk into my door and I will find them the answers that they need. They do not have to run around the building looking for help. I can figure it out for them and help them with that. And that's been our big goal for this.
Thanks, Ashley. And I'll just speak briefly to the Chamber's role. I know all of you, or most of you, sorry about that. There's one volume setting and I haven't figured out how to turn off my other notifications yet. So we have done on-the-job training grant work in one form or another for probably 14, maybe even 15 years now. At different times, New York State has had different iterations of an on-the-job training grant program. Sometimes we would get a big pot of money at the beginning of a year and we would work with employers to disperse that money for on-the-job training. Sometimes the program was more like we had to apply specifically on behalf of a particular business when there was a pot of money available at the state. But the basic premise behind the program is we work with the employer to create a custom training program after assessing the skills gap that might exist for the particular person that they would like to hire for a position. The goal is to provide, 8 to 12 weeks, or ideally 12 weeks would be lovely. Depending on how much funding we have, it might be more like an 8-week period of time, which is what we're looking at for this particular program. Where there's an assessment done at the beginning. We understand what the actual skills are that are needed to be gained over the training period. The employer provides a direct supervisor to provide all of that training directly on the job. It's not to be used for contracting. I'm going to send you away to a training somewhere else at the cost of $1,000. It's actual at your workplace training. And then there's interim checking with the client and with the employer to make sure things are going well. And then there's another gauge at the end of the training period to see whether those skills are gained over the training period. But what this program does is it supports both the trainee in receiving the training that they should get in that new job opportunity, and additional resources being available to provide them that training. And it also incentivizes the employer potentially to hire and work with someone who maybe doesn't have all of the skills that they need at the beginning, or who might not be the ideal candidate in every way, but who maybe has other important assets that they can bring to the position or to the place of employment. And it helps them be able to afford to invest in that extra training. So these grants for this program will be capped at $2,000 per employer, per job training period per employer. Some employers may get more than one grant for more than one trainee over the period. And then this is a 3-year time horizon. That's one thing we haven't talked about. This is the whole program is a 3-year time horizon versus it just being a 1-year program, which is what we typically have worked with in the past. And so, right now we've already identified a few. I'm going to kind of segue into the next topic area here because it seems like a natural fit. We've already identified a short list of employers that we know are recovery-friendly employers and are interested in working with this program, or who, there's a combination of folks out there, they've done OJT grants in the past, they're familiar with those and how they work. They also happen to be employers who are a little bit more flexible and interested in potentially working with this program, and people who are clients of some of the other agencies or receiving some of these services. I think one thing I'd love to hear from the partners on now is just really, what do we mean by a recovery-friendly employer? What does that look like? What are we expecting from those employers, or what kinds of things might they need to do a little bit differently if they choose to move forward with this program, and so that they're successful, and also so that the candidate is successful in the long term. So I think whichever partner wants to chime in on that, it'd be great to hear from a couple different perspectives. Angela?
Well, I was actually going to, I can jump in, but if we wanted to hear from Emily, I think related to this, who's been acting as our coordinator, it's up to you, Emily, if you want to just jump in from that side, or do you want me to go? I'm looking at her. We didn't coordinate, sorry.
I'm happy to chime in where I need to, but I think that it comes best from our very capable direct service providers here that we have on our panel.
Yes, well, I will start. I can tell from the treatment side of things, one of the things clients struggle with is flexibility in their work schedule, with an ability to attend either counseling or group or support groups, or any number of the other tasks that get put onto their to-do list by other systems like DSS or the courts or any of those sorts of things. And so it makes it very hard to maintain regular employment. And then the other thing, I think, beyond sort of just the cut and dry scheduling, is an employer who is willing to partner with us and be a voice in the community to help break down some of the stigma about what it means to be a person in recovery, and sort of making space for that and not judging people by their worst moment, or whatever you want to say. I saw a quote yesterday from someone, was talking to them about Recovery Month, because September is Recovery Month. And this quote was actually from a nun, and I won't attribute where it came from, but was said to this person as they entered recovery: live your life, not your story. And so for me, that really resonated in particular about this project, right?
Absolutely.
So that's from us.
Does anyone else want to chime in with any thoughts on this topic?
I'm happy to. I mean, I've lived in the Ithaca area for my whole life, so I've been an employee before I found recovery, and I've been an employee after I found recovery. And one of my first jobs after I got sober in 2015 was at a local independent business in Ithaca, and there were, to echo Angela, flexibility is huge. I was fortunate to avoid treatment. I didn't need to go to a treatment place. I mostly did 12-step and local groups like that. But having a boss who was willing to see that I was having a bad day and say, like, hey, do you need to go to a meeting? Like, do you need to take a couple hours off and go down the street to 518? You know, what do you need? And to understand, when I was in early recovery, what I was fighting with myself mostly. And then as I had more time in recovery, somebody who was willing to listen to my needs as an employee. Ithaca is very, very proud of our alcohol here. And every single event was heavily catered with wine. And I made a comment to my boss about that, and moving forward, we made efforts to have events that were not heavily catered by wine. So that like ability to listen. I'm also seeing Ritza's question here. How do you become a recovery-friendly organization? That's really listening to your employees in recovery and being willing to be like, oh, maybe we do have 10 events a year and all of them are, catered with alcohol. Maybe we should look at that. That was big for me as an employee. Flexibility and a willingness to kind of look at how you run things from the perspective of somebody who isn't using substances anymore. I'll leave it there.
I have two things I'd like to add on to what Ashley was saying. Deb and I had some discussion about this. Deb Dietrich here, who's really here as an observer today, to the director of OAR, but we both agree firmly that it starts with an understanding of what recovery is. It really does. And then having an employer be open and willing to hire a person in recovery, right? The second most important thing is for management to have an open door policy. A place where somebody can go as an employee and say, hey, I'm feeling additional stress. Or for the management to be able to approach the employee and say, how are you doing with your stress? Just an open door two-way. I do also agree with Ashley, although it's not reasonable expectation on every work site to have some flexibility, so an employee might be able to catch a meeting at the lunch hour, or may be able to step away for 10 minutes to call a support during their workday. That's it from my end.
I'll piggyback a little bit off of what Suzanne said on the willingness for an employer to give someone a chance. Me personally, I've been in recovery for almost 13 years. And I never worked in human services at all until about 12 years ago. If someone wasn't willing to give me a chance to do it, I would never have been able to do things to help people for the last 12 years. And being a recovery-friendly employer also speaks to me about inclusion. There's been a lot of pioneering work in the world of recovery, spearheaded by Dr. Bruce Alexander when he redid the 1970s rat tests with water and cocaine. And he said, this isn't a good test because there's no other options. And he did really pioneering work on how crucial it is for people to be successful in recovery, to be included in community. And that's also one of the beautiful things I see about this partnership is there's so many different ways for people to be accepted into their community and become a part of that community.
And I would like to just add, because I think it's very important for employers who haven't worked with people in recovery before, change can be hard, and we really want to address that. And that's why it's important for us to share that people that participate in this program have the option for the OJT supports that Jennifer mentioned and tax credits. They have job coaching ongoing from Challenge. They have participant support services ongoing from OAR and CIU, support services from TC3, from Tompkins County Workforce Development Board. So it is this wraparound. We want to help clients, we want to help folks re-enter the workforce, but we want to help employers to be able to learn how to be recovery friendly. That piece is really important to mention. A lot of supports that are relevant for employers also.
I think, thanks Emily for that. I think another thing that's interesting is sort of goes back to, Angela, I think it was you that mentioned stigma, right? And this is sort of like one of many things that we might not normally talk about or might not normally ask about. And I think from an HR perspective and from an employer or business perspective, you certainly wouldn't necessarily start to screen for this in job applications, right? So I know that some of these matches are going to be made by us knowing who those employers are and then knowing who's looking for work and finding a way to more sort of strategically match clients to those employers. But I think a thing that's interesting is that there may be a lot of employers in our community that already are employing people in recovery and they may not know it because it's not talked about or they haven't asked those questions. Or that person hasn't disclosed that to them, right? So You know, are there, I know this, I'm going off script a little bit, but are there any thoughts that anyone might already have about, you know, even just opening the door to that conversation, or how do you do that I mean, I know we're going to be trying to create some more space for that and provide some training and some supports for that, but how do people even start to ask those questions or start to think about this differently? Because it might not be that big of a stretch for a huge percentage of our employers, but I think the whole concept is, oh my gosh, you're asking me to do something I've never done before, possibly. So does anyone have any thoughts about, you know, how to kind of get around some of those barriers and some of those just, you know, old ways of thinking?
Jennifer, you took the words right out of my mouth. There are people in recovery all over this community, ranging from CEOs to frontline workers to, you know, like pick the career path. There are people in recovery working in those positions. And what I think the first step that we're talking about is through people in recovery, identifying those employers that have been supportive or understanding without even asking, are you a person in recovery, right? There are ADA issues with this and HIPAA issues with this, right? And so, like you said, we're not going to be screening, and we're not just say all employers should screen for, you know, substance use disorder or something like that. What we're trying to recognize is a place where our community members in recovery will find a, can I say, a soft landing spot back into the career path, right? And that they can then have meaningful work, which then supports their recovery. I think that's sort of step one. And then I will say, I think there will be, like in Oneonta, part of how this started was an employer said, I'm tired of turnover. I'm tired of not knowing how to support my employees. You know, like, I want it to be different. And how do I do that? And she went to a prevention education, you know, agency. And so another piece that we as a consortium or a network and ADC can do is go in and talk to staff and talk to employers and say, like, these are the supports that are available for you. You're probably already struggling with some of these things in some way. You may not know it. You may see it as a attendance issue or a whatever. Pick another sort of behavioral employment performance issue. When what you really need, this person is late because they're trying to make it to a support group before work, and sometimes they don't get out on time, or it's, you know, like that kind of thing. So anyway, so that's my piece of it. I don't know what others on the group say, but
Yeah, I would add to that exactly what Angela said, but also you made the point that we are protected. We're ADA protected, and that's worth noting. When I think about Ithaca and Tompkins County and the pride we have for our local businesses and what we do, I think about how we've created spaces for LGBTQ folk. It's if you create a community and a family in your business where people feel safe being who they are, being queer, being in recovery, being any number of things. If you create a space where your employees feel comfortable being who they are, then you're creating a recovery friendly employer. You know, if I walk in as a day one new hire and I see people who look like me or have things in common with me, then I feel safer, you know, and it can be rough being the only one of something at a place you work. So working to be inclusive is like, it's forever, you know, I talk about it a lot. There's an intersectionality to recovery where you're acknowledging that it's more than just recovery, that people need support and to feel at home with. And Ithaca really prides itself on being that. So I think that's something that we can definitely leverage and use to grow businesses into recovery-friendly employers.
I said that I wasn't going to chime in, but I will chime in on a couple points. I think Angela's point that there are people in recovery who are CEOs, who are HR managers, who are, you know, the hiring entities within a lot of organizations is an important point. And I think one way to reduce stigma is for those of us who are in recovery, who have hiring authority or the ability to, are forthright about that. That this, to reduce stigma, I think we need to be pretty direct and pretty honest about the fact that we've gotten to our positions in a lot of different paths, a lot of different ways, and that we've managed to maintain recovery, and that we have an obligation, in my mind, to share that opportunity with those who are newer in recovery and coming along. Recovery is a joyful path. It's a difficult path, but that those of us who've been along that path can help mentor those who are coming along. I'd also like to say that OAR has hired a lot of people in recovery. And I have to say, I think I have one of the hardest working staffs in Tompkins County, and one of the most empathetic staff members with working with the people that we work with, largely because we've all traveled that path. So employers who may be listening to this, who may be in recovery, who may not be, who may not have a problem, but just, I think welcoming your colleagues who may be in recovery is a first step, and for us to be more open about this journey.
Well, thanks for all that, everyone. I think just going back to something, Ashley, that you said earlier, the chamber, we and the CVB, a lot of what we do is highlight all of our area businesses and the wonderful assets of the region. And as you already mentioned, that includes an awful lot of wine and cider and wonderful beverages, et cetera, et cetera. And it's often the case that a lot of the events that we host, not the morning meetings, not the noon meetings so much, but certainly if it's in the evening or after hours, folks generally have an expectation that there will be alcohol served. So we've been trying to be a lot more aware of ensuring, this is always our expectation, but sometimes it just, if you don't really clearly communicate it or make that clear to the host that you must also provide non-alcoholic options, there will at least be water, et cetera, et cetera. And also just being cognizant of any time that is an option, there should also be an alternate option. And maybe it shouldn't be only you just get water, right? Like that's a way that we can help facilitate making some of the events and environments that we're responsible for more inclusive, because we just don't know who's coming and we don't know what their circumstances are. And whether they work for us or whether they're one of our partners or a business or a person within our network, we don't want them to feel that we're only providing them an option that will lead them down a path that they're not going to be comfortable being on, or that we're influencing them in a negative way. That's not what we want to be as an organization either. And I think there's probably a lot of other types of organizations in the community that maybe could also be more thoughtful about this. And maybe this is an opportunity for all of us to sort of collaborate to make sure that we're influencing everyone to be offering choices for people. Even though I know for some people, even going to anything or even having that choice in front of them is still going to be a really difficult place for them to be, and that they might need to avoid it altogether. For those people that are much further along in their path, we at least can offer some more variety for them. And yeah, thanks, George, for pointing that out, because we're having a fun business after hours with Community Foundation and CSCU and Serendipity, and I'm sure many of you know Serendipity does all kinds of really cool things. And I'm like, they can do those cool things, and also for people who don't want alcohol, right? So that'll be an option at our next business after hours, and that's something I know we're all proud to be able to offer. So sorry, I don't mean to ramble, but I think these are all little things that, again, there's a lot of workplaces and a lot of culture in this community that could be influencing whether people are successful or not, and particularly as it ties into their workplace. So anyway, our next question, which is sort of our last one, unless anyone else here has any other questions they want to put in the chat, or certainly I would invite any of our partners to speak openly to any points that they feel we've missed along the way. is really just what are your specific aspirations and goals for the program and the people that you and or the entire program are serving in the next 2 to 3 years. Like, what does success look like and feel like for everyone?
I don't mind starting. So I have 2 parts. The first, I think the most important, because we can't do it without the community, is a strong interwoven collaboration that brings together our local community and the individuals that are looking to obtain and retain employment. And then from a more like practical, technical point of view, the opening really of career paths for individuals in recovery through the higher education and skills building that, you know, Challenge does, that TC3 does, other schools, college prep programs that will facilitate those employment supports. I also think that ideally, the people that will start at entry-level positions will eventually transition into positions that offer a living wage in a field that not only they're happy to go to work in, but that they're passionate about, and then can help encourage others to do the same. Thanks.
Well, I don't know what else is left to be said. Great job, Suzanne. Just kidding. What does anybody else want to share? Mike, I see you're unmuted.
For me, from a programmatic standpoint, I really want to see more partnerships build as we progress through this, as we solidify our roles, and as we find out what other needs there are. You know, for example, for my personal life, first week sober, standing in Wegmans, looking at an aisle going, hey, it turns out I have no idea how to grocery shop. I have no idea what I'm doing right now. Stand there for half an hour and walk out with 35 boxes of mac and cheese like I'm living the dream. From a more of a human standpoint, as just being a human being that's in community and being mindful of connectedness, I desperately want people who perhaps have spent a long time not having hope to see that there is hope. Hope involves a high level of expectancy and excitement. And I want to see what happens when people see that life can become something that perhaps they never knew they thought it could be, or when they recover something that they had in life that they thought they would never get back.
That's really wonderful, Mike. Ashley?
Jen? Oh, Ashley, go ahead.
Okay. I mean, just to echo Mike and Suzanne, that sense of community, that sense of a future, that sense of being able to achieve life beyond your wildest dreams, which is a beautiful thing that I want for everybody. And mostly, I really want longevity. I want this to be something that, 10 years from now, we'll be in, hopefully not a Zoom chat, sitting around enjoying some hot tea and talking about that time we did this panel where we, we're just a bunch of hopeful people. And now we have this giant program where people can stumble and then find a bunch of hands reaching out for them. That's so cheesy. I hate being cheesy, but like, there's no other way to be about this, is like that hope that when somebody stumbles, there will be all of our hands reaching out for them. That's what I want.
We should have let you be the closer, Ashley. Jen, were you going to say something first? Did you?
I was going to let you go, but.
Oh, thank you. I will go.
Okay. Go
well, I don't know that it's a closer, but the one thing I feel like it's worth mentioning is, so when we all came together in the initial plan and discussion for this, we were in a whole different world of employment, right? So we were, a county that had vacancies, but not that, there were vacancies across our system, but the unemployment rate was really low. And so we were like, hey, here's an untapped market that is lagging behind of people who can fill positions and help, be mutually beneficial. For me, what I want this to be now, in addition to the wonderful, true, and inspiring things that were already said, is that I don't want the people that we serve, the community members that we interact with, to be left behind in the new employment market. And so we need to be very intentional and very specific and a loud voice, if you will, about we do not want them to be left behind. It was bad enough when they were lagging. We need to make sure that they're placed and supported and all that. So those are my 2 cents.
Well, I'm glad that you said that, Angela, because I was actually thinking about that too. You know, I probably people gathered that this started quite a long time ago when we were in a very different job market, different unemployment situation. I do think there are still a lot of open jobs in this community. I happened by just a few businesses the other day and everyone had a hiring sign up in front. And so, you know, recognizing that it's not necessarily ideal circumstances for everyone to go out and find a new job or to go into certain workplaces depending on their personal circumstances, that there are still a lot of opportunities in the community. I hope that we're able to identify enough of those employers who still need to recruit and hire and who want to, you know, be open to working with people in recovery. And again, I know that we all know many employers who already are. And so working with those folks as a base, I think we had a goal of only 10 for the whole grant period. And I definitely think we will have more than 10 businesses and nonprofit organizations in this community who are already working with people in recovery, whether they know it or not, and who are willing to work with them and to be flexible and to be understanding. I do recognize, back to, I think, Suzanne, what you said, some workplaces don't have those same luxuries with quite as flexible scheduling, but I think the vast majority of us have that ability to just, you know, there's a number of ways in which people's needs need to be met. And sometimes it needs to happen within the workday, or sometimes their hours need to flex to make those things happen. And I think especially now, a lot more people are well set up to be flexible and to be nimble and to make changes and shifts and to accommodate people's requests. And so I hope that more of our workforce will feel comfortable telling their boss or their supervisor or their HR folks what they need or how they can work together with their employer to meet everyone's goals and needs. So it is a really interesting time to be trying to do all of this, but it's also an opportunity because so many different systems are being reinvented and looked at with fresh eyes, and everyone is taking these opportunities to re-envision their workspaces and their workplaces. And you know, I hope that actually helps us be even more successful than whatever we envisioned was going to happen back in, I don't know, 2018 or whatever year and month we had initially started having these meetings together. So so yeah, we're trying to specifically have training grants out the door to at least 50 people or 40 people, plus there's additional supports through these other providers where we're trying to at least reach between 80 and 120 people right over the 3 years, depending on which components of the program they utilize. So I certainly hope that we'll at least achieve that goal as well. That's a lot of people's lives to be impacting in a positive way. And I think that's something everyone can be really proud of. So,
can I add a little to that, Jennifer, to say that this is a 3-year Department of Labor funded project that we hope will be sustainable beyond that 3 years. It's a model project. It's a new program for the Department of Labor, and it's not stagnant. So this is a conversation. It's an ongoing dialogue with the consortium and the community to see how we can meet these needs and how we can serve employers' needs and clients' needs. So how successful this program becomes will depend a lot on that conversation with the broader community. And the Department of Labor would love to show this across the country as a successful model of how this kind of work can be done. So I think we live in a great place with a great team, and I'm so proud of what we've done so far and look forward to what we'll be able to continue to do.
Great, thanks, Emily. Does anyone have any final questions or any other, I mean, anyone who's here who's not directly involved, if you had any questions, you'd be welcome to unmute and ask your question or type it in the chat box. It's okay if you have no more questions, that's fine too. Do any partners have any sort of final parting thoughts or any place we want to direct people for additional information? Each of the partners have quite a bit of information, right? So if somebody wanted to learn more about any particular program component, they could go directly to that program partner, which can provide them with additional information about their component, but also the overall program. And we all are pretty well set up to be making referrals directly to each other, and doing a lot of information sharing as well. So I think that's an important point, regardless of where somebody starts. We hope to be able to get them where they need to go, and get them the different component services that they're going to need most. So great. Well, David, did you want to wrap up? Thanks everyone for being here today. I appreciate your time. And definitely this will be an ongoing conversation. This is not the last conversation. We have some additional deeper dive topics and resources that we'll be looking to touch base with folks on in the next few months. And so thanks again from my perspective, and I guess I'll turn it back over to David.
Awesome. Thanks, Jennifer. I do want to say we do have a couple of interesting Learn workshops coming up. On September 23rd, we will be hosting our Providing Quality Service to Customers with Disabilities. We'll be partnering with the Finger Lakes Independence Center for that workshop from 12 to 1. In addition to that, we will be hosting our second and last of 2020 virtual sexual harassment prevention training. For those of you that may be watching this video later, and for everyone on the webinar today, as you all know, it is mandated by New York State that everyone receives yearly sexual harassment prevention training. So this workshop is available on the Chamber's website right now to sign up for. If you have not done your sexual harassment prevention training, there are other organizations that offer this, but we're here to let you know that we have it available for you through the Chamber of Commerce. That will take place at the end of the month on September the 30th. And as George pointed out, our next Business After Hours will be hosted with the Community Foundation as well as CFCU Federal Credit Union, Community Credit Union. So if you'd like to check that out, it is happening on October the 14th. It's going to be a lot of fun, really cool event. And as stated, we will have non-alcoholic options available through our partner Serendipity. So again, to all of our panelists today, thank you all for being here. We truly appreciate it. We appreciate your insight and your time. And to our sponsors, we want to give them again a huge shout out for the Learn series. Without them, none of this would be possible. So thank you all for being here today. And until the next one, we look forward to seeing you. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Have a good day.